Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the channel. My name is Kamau Mahakoe, and with me this evening I have Omari, also known as African, and we're going to be talking about the impact of culture on education. African, welcome.
Yes. Good evening.
All right, so I want to start with a background of yourself as an educator. To my knowledge, you have been an educator in Jamaica for 33 years, thereabouts. So give us an idea of what your background has been.
Well, some of that is formal and some is informal.
Okay,
I,
explain
I,
for us.
eh?
Explain.
Yeah. What I mean is that some of it concern me working with institutions, and some concern me working with people, beginning from in the
1980.
gun court rehabilitation center
Mm-hmm.
in the late 80s, working in Bellevue Hospital, uh, Bellevue Hospital, and studying research and prep school level 2. I won the prep from in the 90s to 2000, and other tertiary institution, which I mean, we're not representing them now, so we can't call say what that is.
Okay. But in what capacity over the years?
As a lecturer at some level and classroom teacher at some level.
All right.
Yeah.
So our topic is the impact of culture on education. So I'm going to ask you to define for me those two key terms. What is culture? What is education?
All right. Culture is going to take a little bit of time for we to talk since we have no pre-planned idea.
Well, we have time.
What,
So
what I
unpack it.
think culture is. I might just plod my way through the definition. All right.
Okay.
However, there's a standard definition where most people tell you say culture is a way of life, but people have been arguing that say even though it's that in one sense, it's not as simple as saying that, and that cultural study argue that culture is a way in which you produce meaning about your life, um, and so on. I would put those two together too, but I would believe that culture is the way in which a people reproduce themselves onto the world, and how they would like the world to view that reproduction that they make of themselves. Um, and in reproducing themselves, everything else that they do is part of that reproduction of self that they map onto the world. So, for example, when we talk about culture and we talk about people, then people make culture, culture make people, right? And therefore, everything you will do, what we call cultural production, is a reflection of who you are, who you internalize yourself to be, and who you externalize yourself to be. For example, let me see if we can find a concrete example. If the European would make, say, atomic weapons and bombs and things like that, because that's a part of how they present them culture to the world. Um, and that's one model. Uh, um, Other people might do other things. People think that the Japanese are technical people who dwell on technology and thus that Japanese and some of the other Asiatic people are leaders in technology, because that's how they rebrand and reproduce themselves onto the world. People think we, black people en masse, are sport people and entertainment people, and thus we project ourselves like that onto the world. And then we have to be contesting the other fields to say, no, no, we are not just that, but we are other things as well. And so that is how the cultural reproduction function and then generate meaning.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes sense so far.
Yes, it does. It makes a lot of sense. So,
All right. Education, no, you give me two terms. I only did one. Um, Education is pretty much, and I have to go back to people like Marcus Garvey for this, because Garvey said eh, charity begins at home, and in your home you must teach the higher science and mathematics to your kids, meaning that education begin right from conception, right? And schooling also begin from conception. So school and education, two different things. Sometimes schooling, you can interchange schooling with education, depends on where you want to place emphasis. For example, sometimes I like the term schooling, because when you say somebody is schooling to something, it means that it become part of them. It become part of them, right? But schooling in our culture, that is to say Jamaican culture, mean you leave your house and you go to another place called school, and then you come back home. It don't mean that there's emphasis placed on the organism that's being schooled in ways in which the organism can then develop a better understanding of what it is, and then how to behave and project itself onto the world. So we don't have that sense of schooling here in Jamaica. I mean, we don't have it, and in many other places we don't have it where black people is concerned. We more have what we call education, and going to school, but not schooling. But in a sense, there is schooling, because the society also operates as a sort of latent schooler. It does school you too. In other words, the culture you operate in help to school you. So if the culture you operate in is not producing good reproductions of you, but at the same time it's schooling you, then what we're going to get is bad reproduction of yourself. But it does schooling you nonetheless.
I
So this is
tend to
what.
look at it at the opposite way to how you present the two words, the
Yes.
education and schooling. I think of the schooling as the more rote and, the more technical and physical part of the thing, and education as the more internal process that you go and bring to your learning. But you're saying it's the other way around. You see it.
All right, just a point of clarification with that. Education, in fact, as we all know, the root word of that educe mean to bring out, to pull from outside of you, which is correct, because education is a reciprocal thing where you bring from outside of you, and then it sort of interchange or commingle with what it get what you put inside of you, or what people give put inside of you, right? So it is a reciprocal process, but nonetheless it concerns you, self-discovery, and the learnability, or what we call the learnability of the student in this case. um People tend not to think of schooling the way I just put it, but when when in casual conversation, them use it in just the way I put it. Like you, as I said before, people will say you are schooling the way you're supposed to be, which is not a bad thing necessarily, but it can have similar consequences to what you say as a sort of mechanical thing. That is to say, when you school somebody without the process of education, then it can end up being the way you just put it a while ago.
Okay. Well, you have taught at institutions, so I'm gonna ask you a question, which is probably moot, but you can tell me if it is. Are you opposed to institution? Are you opposed to the structure, the building of the school? Are you opposed to that concept?
I don't see why I would oppose it. It would be kind of a lunatic position to say I would oppose that, because learning institutions are really a sort of essential product of evolution. Institution is something, by the way. Institutions where people start formalize culture and start to formalize civilization in ways to make certain differentiation in how to organize society on a broader level, and then say what is what is what, and what is what. In other words, it's a kind of categorization that suits how people function and develop.
Okay. The reason
People,
why I asked that is
yeah.
there is a trend recently for persons to homeschool and unschool and world school, right? And the basis behind most of these terms is that they are opposed to the institution, to the structure, to the building, right? And they focus more on the, well, in for example, the unschooling, they would focus on allowing the child in whatever space, whether at home or in the garden or whatever, they allow the child to be the agent to guide himself or herself in terms of what they will learn, what they're interested in. For the world schooling, they would be more inclined to do a lot of traveling, and so the learning would take place outside of any institution. It would take place wherever they happen to find themselves immersed in the culture that they find themselves in. So that's why I
So
wanted
what would
you
they do
to.
in a So what would they do during the thunderstorm? What would they do through hurricane period and things like that? Where would they be?
Well, from my understanding of these terms, right, for the unschooler, the world schooler, wherever they find themselves, they turn that into a learning opportunity, into a learning
But
moment.
I don't think they're saying anything new in that respect. It's just that they're not saying anything sensible.
But
They, they,
they're opposed to the
yeah.
institution. As someone who myself homeschooled my kids, I always hasten to let people know that I'm not opposed to institution, even though I didn't enroll my children for much of their childhood into the institution, but the institution home was the institution, and the reason why I pulled them from the general institution out there was because of the inadequacy in terms of the education being provided. But as a homeschooler, I was not opposed to school as an institution. So that I wanted to put that out there, and just for the fact that there are persons who are opposed to it, and they feel that institution, the school as an institution where you have hundreds of students going in uniforms and they do the rote learning and they do the drills and they do whatever, they are opposed to that.
All right. You want me to respond to
Sure, go
that?
ahead.
All right. The first thing is that um, institution don't necessarily mean building or anything like that. That's the first thing, right? And your home is the first institution. Your home is an institution because there are principles of governance within the home, right? I think most of those people who have that position, they start to blend in two positions. One by this Indian educator called Tagore. I remember him first, but Tagore, who sort of developed a teaching method where children learn outside of quote unquote building, even though they are building, but student, class would be frequently kept outdoors. And of course, John Dewey, I'm the American educator, John Dewey, who sort of develop an experiential model of education where he proposed that practicality or experience. So it's best when students are learn within the environment, so they learn to do things because they experience the things in the environment. But there's no, in many socialist oriented countries, Cuba for instance, when you say institution, they spend some time in the classroom and sometimes outdoor. And this is why our Osamate was a kind of model school in Jamaica, because it rotates student outdoor, indoor, which should be part of every school curriculum. How you, in fact, everything that they are saying is really what the regular school system should provide. For
Should be.
example, there's at some point in the learner development, they should have um, traveling trips where students go out wherever you designate for them to go and learn something about that within a period of time. And so that's not just exclusive to what they are saying. It should be and should be properly developed. However, there are schools that have those development, but school like Jamaica, you find that these things are very limited, and probably to some school, probably some of the so-called upper school or wherever you want. Right. They have similar programming where at a certain point they carry students overseas and so on and so forth. But how that would take place, for example, in some of the schools in Jamaica. Parents would have to foot the bill, right? And therefore it's only who can afford it. We end up going because government will underwrite them kind of expense, right? Because they don't think it's important for black children do all of them kind of thing. So they would not underwrite that.
Okay.
Exclusive to that, what they're talking about. It also is part of what regular education is.
Okay. Is there such a thing as school culture? Each school has having its own school culture as opposed to the national culture?
I would say yes, with certain qualifications.
How would you define school culture?
I will see if I can define. Just this year, early, not so long ago, about 3 months or so ago, somebody from the ministry made a statement that the schools should be more aware of the culture that the students are bringing to each particular institution. Right? The person didn't identify what that culture is, but nonetheless, they said the student, this institution should be aware. And the statement was made during a time when there were many incidents of violence in some of the schools in the corporate area and some of the rural areas as well, right? To begin with, I think there is a class culture. Firstly, there is a class culture which governs the schools in Jamaica. And there is a class race culture which also governs the school in Jamaica. And let me explain that part before we go further. For example, I lived in several so-called inner city community over a period of time. And I've never, and some of them near where other ethnic group do businesses. For example, where Chinese do businesses, Syrians do businesses. But nobody can tell me where the Duns Chinese go school or where the Duns Syrian go school. When you take Chisat and what the other one named Pep, not
Pep.
everybody right. The Duns, black ones from Jamaica will go to some of the quote unquote inner city school around the place, right? Where the Duns Chinese go to. I don't see them in Charlie Smith. I don't see them in St.
Tivoli.
Annie's. I don't see them anywhere wrong where they do business and live. So how is that? How you explain
They
that?
still
How you
end up
explain
in the
in the same top
the
school
same schools, yeah.
where the black one won't go to, right? They had another policy where they said, okay, you will go school close to where you live.
Close to where you live, yeah.
Yeah, I know Chinese who live on Barry Street and all those streets, and none of their children are in any school around the area. How they explain these things? So
So you're saying there's a hypocrisy.
class race demarcation when it comes to quote unquote the distribution of education, right? They maintain that. Now, what happened as a result of that is that the other schools which are not designated as the top schools in the country, when students go to these schools, the teachers themselves have certain disdain for some of the students who sit before them learning, and they would condescend or speak to them in language. I passed by one of those top school one day. I heard one of the teachers, she and some of the guys were frolicking in the classroom, and she was, I mean, she just get loose with the, quote unquote the vernacular, and but she would be doing that in a school located elsewhere. You see, so they're building a culture there, and then and some of the head of these schools are not insisting on the students who come to the school that look, even though the institution is set as such where it is not it is not demanding of you to be anything more than what you come with. We are going to change that culture, right? We are going to use the institutions if we can change that culture into you understanding that you can be better than what you think you than what you think you are. So therefore, a lot of people know that if you come to Charles, there's going to be violence. There's going to be a certain behavior. This is going to be a certain behavior. If you go to Tivoli, there's going to be a certain behavior. But if you go some of the other school uptown, no, that behavior won't be tolerated. How so? If it's governed by the same country laws.
So the school culture at Campion is vastly different from the school culture at Tivoli, and they are vastly
And even
different from the
Excelsior,
school culture at some of the rural schools too, because that's another issue with the rural schools. How do we address this?
So I think it's a cultural problem. I think it's a cultural problem. This is supposed to be the meat of the discussion, where it's a cultural problem. Let me just read you something here,
Okay.
if I can find it. All right. And all right, this comes from the known Brazilian educator Paulo Freire, right? From everybody familiar with the book Pedagogy of the Oppressed, right? But this is not this one.
Okay.
And he says every educational practice is political, just as political practice is educational. Educational practices are always political because they involve values, projects, and utopian dreams that reproduce, hear that term again, legitimize, question, and change the relationship of power obtaining in the society. Education is never neutral. but is in favor either of domination or emancipation. Right? And it distinguishes two kinds of education: conservative education and progressive education. Basically, Jamaica education system is not transformative, and it is not progressive. It and this is one of the reasons why no matter how many times they graduate people from UE or UTech, the society does not evolve. In fact, Jamaica, to me, from my observation, from my study, Jamaica is unique in the sense that Jamaican educated class are really informed by the uneducated class. And I should even say the uneducated, just so that the dunce people are them inform the society. And that's
In what
strange.
way? In what way do they inform?
I can tell you, most people, if you listen to the radio, which is a major medium of disseminating information and education, most of the people who work on the radio, you can't tell them difference from the people who operate the sound system there, or one of them who sing the record them. They sound like they do and say the same thing with these people though. A lot of the academics, them in the institution, them function just the same way as the people who push the cart and who sell on the sidewalk and who do all of these things.
You
And
don't just mean in terms of the vernacular, though, right?
no, but that's important too. Me mean that too. I really mean that too. In other words, and actually I can't read out most of this thing of book that I have in my hand because if we believe where the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis said, when them two people they develop long time, they say language reflect language construct culture and culture construct language, and intelligence also govern language and language intelligence, and therefore language is a medium of power. Not in Jamaica, the vernacular language is not a medium of power, it's a medium of buffoonery and entertainment. They're not using it for power, they're trying not to use it to think, they're trying to use it to entertain, not to think. And the most recent example of that, they keep a thing down, must say St. Elizabeth Emancipation Day, and they call it 1st of August. 1st of August. If you look at the spelling, you can different, you take your time to read that way it's like. I say 1st of August, and it merged into one. And one of the big attraction of that celebration was some man dressed up like a woman and gone up on one light post and a gyrate up on the light post. Now, maybe if the thing did name something different without 1st of August, maybe the man wouldn't go up there and do that, But because of how it name, him internalized that to mean that,
I tend to disagree with you.
Yes.
I see the Jamaican language, I refer to it as a Jamaican language. Well, the way it originated is a rebellion against the oppressors' English and our way of claiming our expression and hiding our expression from them. We were able to say things that they could not comprehend. I'm not seeing why you're saying that this is it's like you're saying we should say things in the Queen's language for it to have sense, for it to be legitimate. Is
All right.
that really what you're saying?
No. Well, yeah, you put several things together, right? As well. The First of all, the discussion on the language always go one way. People say we develop the language, and and academics have studied the Jamaican language. People like Alain and Guyanese professor, and they study the language, and they look at the so-called African roots are some of the terms that the people use. However, there's no people always say, well, we don't need to study the English, but there's no complete thought you can make with the Jamaican language that don't have English in it, right? It's going to have English. But then I never hear hear the discussion going the other way, where people say, all right, maybe study the English in the context of an African language, or one of the group languages that influence Jamaican language. That discussion is out. And one of the things that you're going to never hear either is that, we have a language issue, or do we have a comprehension issue? Do we have a
Hold on,
sociological?
you said you people don't say let's study English as an African language.
No,
That's
not
what
English. I'm saying no. That's not what I say. I say I never hear people say let's look at the Jamaican language and our manner of speaking and say, oh, we can retrieve the African languages are one of them that influence the very language we speak. I don't hear that discussion. Why we don't have that discussion then? So therefore, what I'm really saying is that why are we not proposing how to develop the language to claim the heritage that inform the language in the first place?
there are persons who are working to standardize the language.
I don't know if it's a matter of standardization, because this is part of the problem too. And this is where it comes down to a sort of more psychosocial analysis of the people who using the language, because technically, to me, this is my position, I don't think Jamaican even want, and I mean Black Jamaican, I don't think they want him to speak. I think they even shine away from speaking. I think they just want to live. For example, when somebody said to you, that's my position, when somebody said to you, what do I mean? What does that mean? Which part of language is that?
I mean, every language has sound words like that when you're in the middle of transitioning from one thought to the next. That's not unique to patois.
Yeah, transitioning. You're saying the right thing. You're saying the right. Of course, you're saying the right thing. Transitioning, which means the thing being studied and people trying to. Several countries developed new language since the 20th century. You know, Somalia, Israel. The language Israel speak now is a new language, and it's a language of power. But we don't. We not. This is thing we shy. We don't want to be responsible for that, because comprehension. Comprehension. All right. How do you translate things like word like describe? What would the Jamaican for describe? A word like describe. When you tell a student to describe where you live, they don't know what describe mean. That's not a language problem. That's in that sense. I mean,
I'm not getting you, African. I'm not get you. I'm not get you with it. I'm not get you with it. Me say the language is a power. The language itself, the fact that the language came in the form of is a rebellion against the oppressive language that was given. And the fact that you can say words in patois you can't translate to English, that of itself tell you the power of it. I don't think is the language is a problem if the students cannot express themselves. It's not necessarily the patois is a problem. We need to get to the root of well, as you say, comprehension is a problem, but it's not the patois make them not comprehend.
No, it's the mind.
And I don't think there should be a patois versus English. I think students should master both of them and be able to flow easily from one to the other. So we need to find ways to get them to work on their comprehension, yes, the comprehension skills, but another language occurs the comprehension skills.
No, the language, no, the learner themselves is a hindrance to comprehension because of the culture. In other words, the culture does not promote the kind of capacity so that they can comprehend the language both ways, whichever way you go. Whether you go patois,
how can we fix that? How can we fix that?
All right. So what we need to do is develop a sort of sensible approach. Black students in Jamaica, black people need to develop a sort of sensible approach to learning. That's the first thing, to learning, and not just to accommodate cultural reflex, but to learning. So if we learn French, we learn French, we learn English, we learn Kiswahili, we learn all of them. But we have to develop the mindset that these things are part of learning because we need to operate and control our worldview in the way in which we go and project them. So learn, so the ability to learn maths, to learn physics, to learn chemistry is part of that big comprehension that I am saying is not in the society en masse. And is the culture of society is preventing it.
So
And
again, I'm
part of,
asking, what can we do?
yeah, that's how I'm saying. No, we have to develop. I mean, not necessarily. All right, we have to make the learner recognize that them have the first thing that them have the ability to comprehend things, and people who are educators will find ways how to as Barbara Wright said, how to look at the predilection of the learner and then work out sociological models for them to approach learning via these ways in which we want them to operate, right? Rather than just I say, this one who was said that and that the one who was said that and whatever. How do we? I don't know of any Jamaican educators who formulate learning models in terms of pedagogy. I don't know none. There's
I'm
none.
one over here. I
All
want to
right.
make I want to make two comparisons.
Yes.
So I'm thinking of Japanese culture and I'm thinking of Nigerian culture, and the reason why I choose these two in terms of their students and how well they do on the world scale and their work ethic, they are exemplary, right? The Japanese students and Nigerian students. When you look at Japanese culture, for example, they are very disciplined, right? They come from, so they have a lot of respect for their elders. You will have 60 something students in a classroom, and they will follow what the teacher said. You won't have any disruption to speak of, right? But there's a certain aspect of their culture too that is lewd, sexually, in, for example, in some of the comics, in some of the music and so on. But they still find a way in education to get their students to develop that kind of work ethic. Nigeria, is considered one of the most corrupt societies, right? And we here in Jamaica, we have an issue with the lewdness, we have an issue with the corruption. I'm wondering, I don't know if you know, but how is it that these two countries who still have an issue with lewdness, still have an issue with corruption, but they manage to get their students to be on top on the world scale? I don't know if you have any insight.
Yes, I have.
And also to add to, for the Nigerian experience, is a similar experience to what we went through in the Caribbean. Maybe they had the opposite effect where our ancestors were removed from there and brought here, but it's the same trauma, overall trauma, right, of the disruption of the population, but they still manage in terms of education to be on top. You have any insights in those examples?
My thoughts are that every society going to have pop culture, and they're going to have a certain amount of deviant behavior, including the nudity where you talk about, right? However, within the institution, them have them rules and them laws that this don't pass this point, and if the minute they see it passing that, they're going to arrest it and deal with it in the way it's supposed to be dealt with. So people know the limits of the deviance. They know the limits of where to operate on those levels. Yes, Japan has a lot of that, and you can see it out in the animation and everything that with the pop culture. Does. But you can't spill that over in the society proper. You keep that where it belongs. Nigeria, same thing. Ghana, the same thing. Ethiopia, in similar ways. No, look how Jamaica different now. If you take the bus, it's in the bus. If you take the car, it's in the bus. If they make sure, Jamaica make sure that you're going to have it. This is part of the conditioning, not to
Yeah.
think in serious way and
Oh,
not to think that you can do anything outside of that. This
okay.
this this
So
how culture create and reinforce these things. If you stand up at a bus stop, you hear everybody have it loudly, right?
so
Oh,
should we
why?
go for censorship in certain spaces,
Of course, but
such
then
as
how
where?
bus stops, bus stops and radio, bus stops and radio, right? Which means that if you take out these things out of these public public spaces, then that lessen the amount of impact that these things will have on the learner. I mean the student or whoever it is. Because these are unregulated spaces. We bus stop 100 people that play the same thing. Every single bus stop in a town. You go. The seller them have it. I blast the student them, the taxi them, the buses them, and so on. And I tell you the truth, I only where black student take a go, you hear these things, you know. If it,
Well, only them take the bus.
it's what I was going to say. This is what I was going to say to you. So, but nobody don't want to do that demographic studies there and see how these things impact the learner where I go to school.
But how do we regulate the internet?
Well, you see the internet, you go to it if you go to it on your own. Yes, but these spaces first, you start with them because you don't have the student don't have no control over them. Right? The student don't have no control. So once you started that, remember, you know, when they first start giving out the tablet, when Philip Powell did start distribute tablet, they had things on it where prevent the browsing of these things, you know. Right? But the impulse of the student allow them to break some of them code there and find the thing where because them propelled by the preponderant of foolishness way in the culture. So them but you can still control, you can make better ones each time them break it, you make better ones. And that like what China do, TikTok, the TikTok where we use over any China have maths and chemistry and physics and learning but for them TikTok. But the one where we have the scum. So these things are regulated in sensible people country.
Yeah. I was listening to just in the week here. I was listening to Kamala Basin. She was an Indian. Well, she was mainly a feminist, but she spoke on other matters, and she made a statement that culture should adapt to humans, not humans adapt to culture. Right? The culture should adapt to the humans. Since we have identified, so we're speaking in the Jamaican situation, the local situation, since we have identified that there is a pervasive, I wouldn't even call it a problem, it's more than a problem, but let's, for argument's sake, we have identified this problem. So we realize now that we need to, it's almost like we need to transform the culture. We need to make the culture adapt to the new Jamaican or the new black boy, the new black girl, the new black man and woman that's going to go into the future now. So, and because it is pervasive, we have to think now at every level of society. So in terms of the parenting, in terms of in the school itself, where do we start and what are some of the practical, realistic things that we can do on the home front, on the school front, in the playground to
Right.
start this process?
All right. We have some simple thing, practical, very practical, but we don't know if people are willing to do that. The first thing I think is that let's say come September, parents and student and parents and teachers was issued the government a statement said we're not sending our students to school taking these buses and these cars with those things playing in them. We will not be sending out and we will not be going to work under those conditions. You don't think they would have do something about that? If you have 20 parents and teachers decide just go turn up out the road and say we're not going to school and we're not with that kind of under that condition, I think that would be a big way in making a change and demand that the law govern the people who stand for the bus stop them with them ugly music and wait till school over to start blast the dirtiness. You don't think they would have to change that? So that's a simple thing. That don't take nothing.
Okay, so that's one thing. How do we get the parents to? It's like, oh boy, most parents, from my observation, they themselves were not properly parented. They did not have the skill set needed to properly guide children, right? So they had them and now they are there without any blueprint to follow.
Right.
How do we help the parents?
But you see, these things are, and that's why we believe in a psychosocial dynamics, because if you have a handful of those who know and those who know deciding that this is what's going to happen, then those who don't know going to follow the ones who know. And that's how it goes. And when you have legislation, you just work with that, because the first statement that you read with the Indian activists is that culture
should adapt to
culture is a product of human agency. And if you don't have no human agency, then you're going to be swamped by what the culture does in and of itself, right? And then you'll be perpetuating it because it's swamping you. So if the parents, and some of them are part of the problem, if the parent, if we have a handful of, as I said, a handful of teachers and parents who say this is what going to happen, then the one who don't know but still want the best for them child or children going to have to follow that. They're going to have to follow.
The culture in certain places is such that it boils down to a life and death matter if you try to change it, right?
We don't think we reach that stage in Jamaica.
Really?
We don't think we
culture, if you go into certain inner city communities and try to make certain changes, or even some inner city schools, and try to influence the student, just go one day you're inspired and you want to, it's a life and death matter. They will come with their uncles and cousins with guns.
Right. Yeah, I mean, me know. So, I am aware.
Yeah, it's literally a life and death matter. A lot of teachers go into these schools with the best of intention, and I'm going to transform, and the type of resistance that they get from the students, from the parents, from the community, after a while they just it's literally their life.
We kind of don't believe them people who say that they're going to find them. Some of them just got to spread Christianity, you know. We don't know if they're going to bring social change. They think of Christianity, and then when they don't see them foolishness at work, they just give up. However, we could go back, if you take the incident of the pandemic, for one, and the COVID thing, by legislation, when the government legislates, said this have to happen and that have to happen, if you see how the people fall in line, if you see how them fall, you don't never know a big bad Jamaican them fall in line and behave themselves for the most part. Only when the government slack up, they slack up too. So what
the
I'm
same
saying,
way that when them go foreign, them fall in line.
Of course they can. This is what I'm saying. It's not really entrenched, you know. It's just reinforced, but it's not really entrenched. You know, people keep it up because they want it to be like that. So they keep it up. I'm going to give you a thing. I'm going to tell you two examples how they insist, even within what we call commodity fetishism, how even the way the people market certain goods is marking to the non-sensibility within people. For example, they make a new snack. Just come out probably say last night, Friday night, may I see named Zulu, ZOOLLU or something. Zoo, as in monkey zoo, animal zoo, right? And it's a snack. I mean, I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but why you mark that's not a zoo, and it a degrade the African Zulu thing too. You know, so they market things based on the kind of mentality where you feel like you have, and they want you for reinforced as it, because they can live from it. It's a business. You take for instance, that's supposed to be a kind of MIT of the Caribbean, so to speak. The oversubscribed course up there, hospitality management. I'm nothing to do with the technical courses then within the college. And nobody have a problem with that. So if
what should it change to? Is it more technical?
Yes, then that's in our name. That's in the name. You take it in the name, the very name. But yes, it's a servile industry. Them promote, not the tech thing. So within the last 40 years, there's no technology coming out of UTech. There's no technical advancement coming out of UTech that benefit the society. If you're going to build a road and a UTech, I got to do it, and a UTech student or UTech graduate overseas, the more lose technique expert from overseas. How we have to, you see, and these things come with a self-respect and self-love. Most of black people out there have no self-love. And that's why they allow these abuses to take place upon them. I think they can live through it and get through, So that's why them now go demonstrate and say we want better transport for carry the children at school. We want a nice free thing, so they can go home and come back in within the proper mentality. And we want transport. We need transport too. So a lot of things affect the learner. Food affect the learner. Say if you have bad nutrition, even worm can affect your learning. Light affect the light you have in classroom affect the learner too. Them say the white light cause anxiety, agitation, low ceiling, a lot of things. So how come transport not affect the learner? And we have the worst kind of transport system in the world.
But as you mentioned, that the learning environment, the comeback you're gonna get is the funds, right? Where do we get the funds to modify the learning environment to make it conducive?
Right, but you don't need fun to tell people not to play dirty music on bus, and you don't need fun for that.
No, I'm saying
we have a police force. So
the music is one thing.
Yeah, but within the school itself.
Yeah, you just raised the point that the learning environment might not be conducive.
Right, which means from you take the bus to the school and from school to back, all of that I learning environment. We have the country. If you look at the 2022, what we in 23, 2019 to 2020.
The census?
No, budget for education. The year when we had COVID, that was the year them put the highest money in our education. And if you look at the breakdown, you can find it. If you look at the breakdown, most of the money went into develop information. Some foolishness like that. So go to infrastructure 4 or 6 and another learning aid within school, even though the school never keep of such. But what I'm saying, the money was not in circulation or in use generally to improve nothing while the students were out. The money was just going back in our people's pocket. And then when you take us like if you see all of the argument that we can't find the money to do this. We can't find the money to do this. The amount of irregularities and criminal conduct will happen within some of them very ministry there. Sure, you said there was money. Sure, you said there was money. But it's why? It's just what are the priorities of the government? The black people education is not important because and you have to look at it so black people education is not important because if it should be important as Freire said right so it would lead to social transformation. Jamaica as a country don't want no social transformation because then it means the society would probably level out in terms of economics and other kind of social priorities, but them have to keep the inequities going. There's a book come out where nobody really want to talk about. There's a book named Hegemony to but it's a book about Jamaica and how white people, a new book come out of one university overseas, how white people and the other ethnic groups down here by policy dictate to the government what's supposed to do and what not supposed to do. Right? So people overseas are studying, but nobody here studying it.
All right. So by policy, so that means we need reform, constitution reform, policy reform.
Yeah, we need.
And how do we get the dinosaurs?
Yeah, these people who control the government well,
how we get the dinosaurs?
How we get the dinosaurs from where? Amongst the population, amongst the government.
Well, the government.
You have dinosaurs in the population, and you have dinosaurs.
Yeah, we established that because I'm saying, because I mentioned, especially when I was talking about the parents, the older ones where it's like it's already ingrained in them. Do we just we wait for them to die out? And in terms of the politics,
no,
we encourage.
No, this is what I'm saying because some of the younger one is just as bad as the older one. I feel like fool no matter what age. What I'm saying is that once we have a certain set of people who do the agitation and the lobbying, then
so we encourage them to become representative.
Exactly. They will have to follow because it's a sociological thing. They would have to follow. That's how every society do it. If they can't wait on the masses to do nothing. Some people have to take charge and do it and get legislation up and running.
So you're forming your party, I'll join.
By the way, a new party just formed last week.
May I talk about your party?
Well, you see, the thing is, I went to the minister. I went down to the minister. The minister of transport, twice last month before him get shuffled away. That matter hardly sure, right? And lay out some serious complaint about the bus system, and they did and then try to ignore me. All them jump around and write to the paper, and write to the paper, then take me off, then take me out, and block me. And so on and so forth. So in fact, the last month when when some teachers were down at Eurostar striking, right? Did you me go for join them? We can't find them because we do on a platform. I mean, we never see Jamaican states yet. Is the way we. I mean, you talk to a lot of people and then tell us, but leave it to Jesus and you leave it to who, you leave it to what, and we don't know them. Not see the similarity between Jesus and the government we have out there. It's one and the same to me. You have to suffer first and die before you get a little bit of attention, right? But we don't want that. I mean, we can have social movement. Because when government and opposition have failed, if the people really need governance, then the governance should have come out of the people. If Jamaica, the people have failed, the government have failed, the opposition have failed.
Well, it's because the people are corrupt because the representatives come from the people, as you say.
Exactly. So we just need to have a set of people who going decide, say, we going to lobby demand from government as citizen. You have to say as citizen. We going to demand from the government the change that we think will benefit the society overall. Right? And that's what we don't have. No, we don't have that. And for the life of me can't see a group like citizen and not a citizen, what they name, child, something like that, protect agency, something like that. Child, whatever.
Child
Betty and
protection
Blade
agency.
organization. Maybe can't see them silent on this music, this bus culture for one, because not just the music, at the unavailability of a proper transport for carry
Yeah,
children.
because the students spend 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening just commuting.
Yes, at every bus point, and sometimes more. Come me go through the bus center and see students asleep on them bag. Right? Asleep
And that's
on
a
them
clear
bag.
disadvantage in terms of
That affect learning.
yeah.
That affect learning. You go to school or come back. And if
Come
you
back.
I'll teach
2 hours,
I'll teach
2
them
hours
asleep
each
too.
way.
Teacher me see in their sleep too. So which means by the time them reach school, very little them can go
And
over
they're
again.
both irritable and just not
Yes.
in the frame of mind.
Not in the frame of mind, and when you sit down in front of a class will look like them, that worse. That trigger the problem. So, so why those teachers not say something on the matter? And them are educator. The man say education. Actually, the teacher didn't read neither. Education must be transformative. It is not neutral. It is not neutral. Right? Otherwise, the technical schools in the country shouldn't be functioning like traditional academic institutions solely. And one of the reasons why Osemate was dismantled, because Osemate would have been a sort of model school for the way schools are supposed to operate, both as institution for training and institution for educating, right? Because the student used to do whole thing over there when no other technical school never do in the country. But they mashed up, because again that would lead to some kind of transformation within the society.
Yeah.
So
yeah, go ahead.
I'm saying, for example, if we look at what we call a dropout student. If a student, say a student was going say Kingston Technical or St. Andrew Technical High School, and a student was going one of the high school, and the two of them quote unquote drop out at a certain grade. If the two of them go and make, let's say them decide that them are going informal commercial activities, and the two of them want to make a hand card. They don't make a card the same way. I see him kind of card. I go see why the technical, why one come from technical school can't do better than one from the academic school? Because the technical school not technical at all. It never train him really to do nothing. So him and the other one upon the same level, and the other one who never go to school, the whole of them make the card the same way. This learning not take place where put nobody above the other. And if the person drop out from UTech to a same card, he might come make me can bet you.
So you're saying the overwhelming impact of culture on education has been negative, and there needs to be a reform in culture and a reform in education.
In education, and there's I'm going to go back to even some more ideas about that if we don't lose track. For example, one of the things that I think used to happen at Osamate, all our friends who go there, they learn to break bread. That's a very important bread.
To bake?
They learn bakery, breaking bread. Not to bake like home economics, but to bake bread to supply the school internally. That to me was an important thing. They have a thing what they call STEAM. STEM in a certain places, Jamaica calls STEAM. Right? There was a little girl in, I think, Oklahoma, like an 11-year-old girl, in a STEM program. and she used her cell phone, different parts of the cell phone, as part of one of the science project, to make a lead detector in water. Right? She's 11. A lead detector in water. And she won first prize with some science thing. And some developer I take the idea and I got to put that in a mass production. Them I go manufacture, get the thing where she make with her cell phone. Them I go manufacture. So the little girl is a billionaire already.
Yeah.
Is a billionaire already, right? I was at Michael a couple of years ago in an interview with the people who run Michael. And one of the interviewer asked me if I know about the new development in education. So I said, well, I don't know what you're talking about. Could you tell me what that is? So you don't know about the new development? I said, well, maybe I know, but I don't know what you referring to specifically. And she said, oh, you don't know about STEM? So of course STEM is not new, because Brazil have about 100 schools where they teach STEM long before even Jamaica start even mention that. And Jamaica don't have no STEM. So them said Jamaica have STEM and Michael have STEM. I said, no, Michael cannot have a STEM program. Jamaica don't have a STEM program. So and then look at me, quite amazed. So I said, so the man said, what it means? I said, okay, if we had a STEM or STEAM program, would have corresponding development in the society to harness the things that they're going to develop in this STEM program, so that they can put it out in the society, then develop the thing so we can have industry going. If you by chance, if a student by chance come up on any invention in the school, that's where it born and that's where it's going to die. Couple years ago, some student from Donawang High School, one of the rural area, they developed, I think it was a fertilizer or something like that. And they want some fear with the product. And they need $1.5 million to go to Trinidad. 15 of them, 3 teachers and 12 students, to go to Trinidad to enter in a bigger fair so they can have that thing peer review. The government at the time, 2008, I think it was 2008 or a little bit later, promised to give them some money. SRC promised to give them some money. Coming down to the appointed time, none of them give the president the money.
If them did win a race, then would I get it?
Our dance.
Our dance.
Yes, then would I get it. And the Kabu come up on Irie FM, remember, and a lament, $1.5 million and 15 youth got the education. It can't come from nowhere. 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 1.5 million Jamaican dollars is foolishness for any donor who care about education. We contribute, even half fight and somebody else got half fight. I don't know what became of that. So look at that again, and what it's saying to us is that we will not support nothing that will lead to no transformation and nobody through education.
Well, I know that this year the government has allocated 500 STEM scholarships, each valid at $500,000.
Right.
And it's a 5-year. It's gonna be over a 5-year span, right? So these students are starting this year, and they'll be funded their tuition every year for the next 5 years in STEM. And of course, they're bonded. So when they're finished, they'll be bonded for 5 years to stay in Jamaica and work and develop based on the training that they receive in STEM. So, and I know this is across Michael, UTEC, and a couple other institutions.
I can bet you at the end of the 5 year, this all right. You might have a program, so them which is a regular. It sounds like a regular academic program, but my point of the matter is, let's say I am in the STEM program and I have developed something, a piece of machinery for solve let's say, electricity problem, where in Jamaica would I go and ask them to develop this thing for me?
Mm.
There's nowhere. There's
So you're saying
nowhere.
alongside that kind of scholarship, there should be investment in terms of like a catchment for the product.
Yes, it must. Then that's how transformation
Promising.
goes. That's what we say. That's why we say education is transformative. Because
Mm.
if you develop that product and the country can harness the development, then the country have something to sell to the world.
Mm.
Yeah, and are something to put out to the world. And this is what we say culture is. How do you make meaning of yourself into the world? This is something that we say we develop. But the entrenchment of classism and racism in Jamaica will not allow that. Will not allow that. Recently, a guy named Sergio, I don't remember my first name, he's a chemist, PhD chemist, I think, and he came from Guyana and gave a lecture at UWI. And the lecture was about how them taking indigenous crops from Guyana, from the black people in Guyana. How them are using indigenous crop to make different kind of a product, not just in terms of cottage industrial product, but product like say we can compete with like Lucozade and these things. Of course, it's in a food and beverages still, but is a big start them get. And not a word is said about it in a Jamaica in terms of initiating something
Mm.
that we could do in that way, even within the high school. How do we take the student them and in the science quest and carry them in the field and say, okay, here's a crop. You go study this crop. You go study this crop. This is what I'm saying. There's nothing that will
Or
correspond
you
in
see,
social
in terms of the
education.
mindset, right, which is important, the mindset of the students. So at my school, we have certain programs in place. Like we teach Garveyism as a course in the school, a compulsory course in the school. We teach Black Achievers as a compulsory thing where the students they are given specific individuals to go and research. So, for example, the students who from all over the world who develop, as I said, the student who develop the thing to show the lead using the cell
Mm,
phones, things like
mm,
that, where they are sent out and they do research and they find out about these children or men and women who have done this, whether in the past or contemporary. That is a part of developing the mindset. That for me is a positive change. Another thing in terms of mindset, growing up in Jamaica especially, and in other listening to speeches, for example, given by Black Power activists and so on, there was always a complaint for years and years and years that we need to have Garveyism in the schools. We need the children to know about Garvey's message of self-reliance and knowing your history and knowing, because this will be the seed that will enable them now to first know that their ancestors did it. So that's the framework for them to know that they can do it. Now, I wrote 3 Marcus Garvey workbooks: the beginner level, the intermediate level, and the advanced level that can even be used in colleges. And I took these to all the organizations that I thought would embrace them, because these are the people, the Black Power people, the Black conscious people who are always talking about we need Garvey, we need this, we need that. Even to the international level, there was a African conference where I presented and told everybody about these workbooks. To this day, nobody has reached out to me about, and these are persons who are in the position of power that could have put out these books and ensure that they are available in the schools to Black children, to lay that foundation in terms of their mindset at least. who Garvey was and the message that he preached, and all of the positive things that they must develop in themselves as students so as to achieve. Nobody has reached out. Nobody has taken it out. Okay, so I made the books. The next step, somebody I pass it on to somebody now in a position of power to get it out there. And that's how I get to understand that a lot of persons, even in the Black power, the Black consciousness movement, is just a matter of word. It sounds good to say we need this, and it sounds good to say we're gonna do that, but they're not ready to back it up with action. For me, that's why I keep asking you for, okay, what are the practical things that we can do? Because diagnosing the problem is not difficult. We see that there is a problem. We see that it is pervasive, and we understand that it needs to change. Having said this, what are the practical things that we can do? And for me, this is one of the practical ways, getting these workbooks into the schools from the elementary level for them to study the principles of this awesome man who walked the earth, and the messages that he promoted, the self-reliance, respect for self, you don't waste time reading, all of these things that Garvey promote. The people who are in power to do it, they don't do it. So it indicates to me that somehow we were just full of a lot of chat and a lot of shit, and we're not really ready to do the real practical things to make the change, to make the transformation.
All right. So when I had said that, when we give our first practical things to the people
For the
need to just say,
boss, yeah, the boss.
if we not go work and not do this and whatever, right? And in terms of the conceptual framework for the psychological evolution of the student, no, that is something else which you preempt a while ago with the Garvey thing, right? And as reading from fear, without fear, it's a fear, not a fear of fear, part of fear. And we look at how education should be transformative. Um, the same books in question where you raise, I wrote, I responded to a call from Liberty Hall, I think it was, yeah, King Street, about some involvement. I thought at first it was a presentation. I wrote up this presentation and then realized it might be a presentation, but something to go in a magazine or a book or something. But it's a presentation nonetheless, but for publishing. I had mentioned those 3 books. I'm gonna put the image of the book put the image of the book in there and attribute it to you as an educator and some other thing. I know I mean I about 2 years ago.
Those books were hand delivered to Liberty Hall many years ago.
I put it in a presentation, and I know I don't hear from them. I don't know if the thing published. I don't know if it don't publish. I don't know nothing.
Yeah, but I'm saying you mention it. The books were hand delivered to Liberty Hall.
So what I'm saying, if you undeliver them, I didn't know that, and I wrote up the thing, put in the imagery in the thing as a presentation, and still not come up it. Then you realize what it is that we're up to. But it's a bigger problem. You know what a bigger problem is? If you listen to a lot of so-called Garvey scholars and Garveyite and those who, what them interested in is buying and selling. Is the commercial aspect of Garvey's. And tell us that we have some supermarket runners over there, so, and we have some product over there, so we have stores. I said, who make the things in that store? No, not them. Certainly not them. What they make as only craft, or maybe crafting them put together. But they don't realize that you can sell education. The world has sell education, China has sell education. White people are sell education. Japanese are sell education. That's why we clamor for go at them school or learn it over the. I sell them. I sell education. We don't have we can develop education that the world can buy education from us. We see when we buy from Oxford and buy from Yale and Harvard. We don't have that vision of Garvey. And Garvey never was a man who sit down and just the buying and selling of food. Garvey say what we are lacking is men of big affairs. These people are not men of big affairs. It's
Something grand.
No, they don't have. No, that's why when Garvey put a ship on the ocean, it was a demonstration of big affairs. There's no ship on the ocean like the black people since then, right? You have singers, who are supposed to be God conscious Rasta singers who can go buy 3 car cash and him don't put a down payment on a little boat. They say we're gonna put this boat and make a ferry we go around the island and do something to the country then. We have a significant as a first step towards developing a bigger plan for Garvey. I mean, we have big ideas to plan, but we can't get them out to people. We're not going to come and give out the plan to people because, people listen to people and take people ideas and go develop them. Ho Chi Minh and Italy and all of them take Garvey idea and Korea, South Korea, come in a Jamaica, South Korea, and foreign minister, deputy prime minister came to Jamaica 2012, I think, and tell the country say Agavism then study make them be a prosperous nation. But again, South Korea are Koreans. Jamaica, not the black people. Jamaica, this is what I'm afraid that they don't want black people to be transformed in Jamaica. And this is why now we come to another crucial thing. We're talking about culture again and the demonstration of how they want to reinforce the same self-doubting, self-effacing, psychological positioning of the youth them. I remember growing up on every Independence Day when they might keep celebration, somebody have to come and read Miss Lou. We do something from Miss Lou. There was nothing come up and read nothing from Garvey. Garvey have poem, Garvey have different. There was nothing Miss Lou. Why Miss Lou and not Garvey? Because again, Miss Lou are gonna use the language for reinforce entertainment and not intellectual development. And there's somebody told them I read, and some of the most racist poem that Miss Lou have. Like twang and them kind of thing there. You come back, boy, you ugly same way. Why makes up why them thing never read? Why is student to learn that?
Yeah.
And we don't have a problem with these things. We elevate Miss Lou like a something for elevate. And she have used a very language in our press way. Me always keep coming back to the language, because what she that do not new in the world. So you have some black people that use America, and Garvey was against them too. Kunte Colleen, James Weldon Johnson, all of them that use this Zora Neale Hurston, I use the language as a tool of self-oppression. And Garvey I said, no, cannot be doing that. This is what the enemy wants to hear from you. Because them feel all right, them feel entertained, just like Jim Crow, jump and shuffle and dance, Jim Crow. This entertainment is it not challenging them. So Jamaica have this same kind of pattern of culture being an obstacle to black people development.
Well, we're gonna agree if we disagree on the language, because I love the Jamaican language and I see it as a rebellion against.
No, you're talking from the earliest inception of the language. I don't know if at this part you're talking. You always go back to it as a rebellion. No, it's not a rebellion. No, it's accommodation. So it's two different things you're talking.
To me, it's still because
well,
they're just on the basic level of there are things you can say where somebody who speak only English not gonna understand.
And our part in English people can say with somebody we don't understand. In fact, we are struggling to understand our part in English.
Well, not that is only if
but
we know the students are struggling in language. But if the students
I not just the
are
student.
taught proper,
All the teacher.
in a proper way, them not gonna struggle with it. Them not gonna struggle with anything where English speakers say.
If you teach English people, I will but them I learn patois, you know, and I learn it very well. One of the things with the CIA they used to do in America, you know, is get the Jamaican them to write out the patois thing and and they study it. That's what come them whole party cook at it from down here, you know. Then call it deadly double speak. And so they come and find them out because it's easy to learn because they realize it is as simple as ABC. So it's monosyllabic. So it never pose no problem to them.
We're going to agree to disagree on that. But what me want for my students is to be able to, so just like how me master the two of them, and I can switch like that, and me challenge anybody to challenge me in English. I'm still a spin the patois same. That's how I want my students to master both of them.
Louis,
I think
Louis Bennett educated at Oxford. Louis Bennett was Oxford educated in English, you know. She knew the English well, you know, and use the other one as an instrument of oppression against black people in Jamaica. It's fine. To me, there's no wrong. Student must learn the two things. And I tell you, when them learn the two things, they better able to make the decision, and they must learn other languages too. In other words, don't use the language the English as an excuse for not developing the cognitive skill for understand things. This is my problem. And you feel say you're going to bypass thinking and understanding when you say, all right, I'm going to speak the language. Even that you have a problem with.
Yeah, because we don't promote reading even at the home level. Because you see, when children read a lot, they expose themselves to how other people express. And so that's how they learn to express, you know, when they see the variety of ways that other people express at the different levels. But we don't encourage reading at the home level. Most adults, when you mention reading to them, you know, the first thing them say, boy, as me look on the word, them head start early.
Our students, Negro student,
because that is a part of the home culture. That's a part of our home culture, which we need to change.
And home education, where the parents don't insist to begin with that as we say, a system of governance same way. So you if you know this is good, and yet some of them students there, some of them children there, as they hear one of the careless music, they know how to dance it because they practice it. Now the own and parents help them practice it. You know, so I don't know motor skills because I don't know not about anatomy now, which mustn't do nothing. I just jig. But they in school them in a jigging from them very little.
Yeah. So this is one of the
and then can't and gone.
This is one of the practical things. Yeah, this is one of the practical things we can do at the home level. Half an hour. If we set aside half an hour every day, if every parent say half an hour every day, if me I wash the plates, want him sit down beside me with a book and read to me for half an hour. And maybe the next day I read to him and what
explain where you read.
Yeah, and what kind of material too. Because I know just we don't want no fairy tale.
Yes.
I know Disney. They must read scientific books, they must read autobiographies, they must read speeches from great men and women who deliver speech. They must read those speeches. And
so that when they read variety, they can analyze it. So when they read fairy tale, they can analyze
exactly.
and know.
And the parents, may I make it finish? And the parents, when they watch if me not say no watch fairy tale because as you say, it's a part of the analytical process. But when the parents watch it with them, break it down for them. So when them watch it by themselves, them already the mind already programmed that way. If you break it down, for not just take it at face level, because you can't keep them in a bubble, you know. But you have to have the kind of exposure that is guided, so that when the exposure is there without the guidance, then them can guide themselves through it. Finish your point.
Right. And that is a common sense, and that is a common sense approach till once you have the mentality for common sense. But remember, in a classroom as a student a couple of years ago, overseas, and the lecturer came in. I remember which topic we were doing, but one of the person who were studying was giving an account of their development, and the person said when they were 12 or 10, every time them father come in, him bring some Time magazine and some Newsweek and throw it down on them and say, read them thing to me and tell me what it say. You know, and they have to try read it, they have to read it. And if you listen to the biography, read the biography of some whole of them so-called successful European, they might tell you from early age them orientation when they used to have. When I read Tyson biography, what name again? Tyson, the astronomer.
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Neil deGrasse Tyson. I might talk say when you know when him did young, you know, the process of development where him I get him never brilliant, and other student was more brilliant than him, but him parents them insist say one youth in particular who was brilliant but kind of wayward. You know, when him Neil invite the youth over to females, the parents have them on a serious regulation because they know the other one wayward and know say Neil not too bright. So in order to balance the equation, you know, Neil have to bring him in a studiousness like himself to, you know, the he can come with the mindless ramping because Neil the pan a deficit already. So he can carry the deficit. Not gonna make him carry Neil wide. So there is a certain regulation of that.
As you mentioned that, I heard Neil in the week here, because you know the Barbie movie came out. Yeah, I heard Neil just on a little video clip breaking down the concept of Barbie and you know the role that she was given and how it could have influenced children and that kind of thing. So as you mentioned, because he was taught from that early age to be analytical of things, even something like a doll, you have to understand, so you have to break that down and say, what is the impact that this is having on young girls and even young boys, in just the way the doll is put out there is not just a toy, you know.
Yes, and again, see, and look what the Barbie look like. It look like the people whose culture it represents. What I'm saying, how you get meaning from the things where your culture put forward in the world. You know how in this book, I don't know if you can see it like it's a book from
Caribbean. I just say Caribbean, yeah.
It's Caribbean Journal of Education, and it came out of Jamaica in the early 60s, probably about 60. Let me see. Oh, this is 1976, I think. But when you read this struggle, it's a 1976, you know, but no matter about from 60s, post independence coming up. And when you read this struggle, we take the government of Jamaica, we start provide proper education, both building and substance to black children. Is a hell. It was fraught, you know. It's not just something they just get up and do, you know. It had to be contested, challenged, and because guess what? It was never part of the
intention.
The intention that we saw, right? It was never part of the intention that we saw. And even when some agree say it must be this way, because the way it going to be will affect the power relation of the country. And the thing I say so the journal, but you nobody now go read it. To I dash them that dash to in the library. I take it up.
And
Yeah,
that's
library for them and
important.
them do it way.
Yeah, it's important that we have access to these journals because they are revamping it. They're revisiting history
Yes,
and rubbing out
yes,
what need to rub out
yes.
and put in what need to put in. So when you have
Right.
the original documents, it's so important that when you take it out and compare it, even the Bible, the
But
religious books are being rewritten.
yes. And some people tell us, say, oh, but this was written long ago, but the Bible was written long ago, but people still have it, rewrite it and
It's
reread
still
it,
being rewritten to suit the narrative.
and do everything. So I throw them a throw it because apparently at 1978. So me no
Yeah.
want to know, me should know what happened in 1978. So
Mm,
therefore, we won't have no history of what was before. So that's why I want to know what happening now. Very same issue there in other thing as well, and the struggle, and the struggle not finish. The struggle, if I mean, the state of affair that we have now is alarmingly, it's below contempt.
yeah.
To me, it's below contempt, and we are
Well,
right with nobody not
as an
demanding.
educator, I am completely committed to raising the standard for Black children and starting in my corner, starting in my small corner, and hopefully for it to expand. You know, if each of us in our corner commit to that and do practical everyday things to help Black children and the parents who who we have within our influence as well, you know, then that is a start. We're going to wrap it up now, African, but I would invite you to come back another time to talk about some other issues affecting education or whatever else, you know, in whatever capacity. Thank you for sharing the time with us this evening. Thank you for your thoughts, your insights. Do you have anything to add before we wrap up?
Well, one of the things I would say is that the I don't know to what extent people. I think parents should follow the children education, follow the process, and be involved in how the student um, acquire learning and acquire the education. And I think one of the one of the main things that they should do is be more analytical of what we call the Jamaican culture. And because within the Jamaican culture, there are some serious handicap and hindrance to learning, which we tend to either we gloss over or we tend to revel in it and then demand different outcome, which is total contradiction. You know, it's total contradiction. So first of all, we must be cognizant of how the society is treating our children, and
What I,
that is not good at this moment. It's not
what
good.
I would want us to do, you and myself and whoever else can contribute to this, is to make a list of maybe the top 10, the top 15 aspects of Jamaican culture that are most detrimental to the education of our children. So make that list, and then another list that will show some practical steps that we can take.
And of course, we this about five already. The music, the the music, the bus culture, the transportation culture, which is two things. The one is the lack of it, and two
The
is
fact that the
the
parents don't read and
right.
don't.
And look, about that is one thing. The other thing we should do and be careful is the selling culture. When I say the selling culture, a lot of people come to school gate and sell, and they're not selling things that the students should consume.
Yeah.
Plus, does is an exploitation at infant, them exploiting the very infant that them themselves produce. I never see a big contradiction like that yet. When you come at a prep school door or a primary school door with a bag of detrimental goods, trying to pull away the dollar from the
kids.
Kids.
And the thing about it, you know, most of the schools, as a matter of fact, the ministry itself has a policy against this. And most of the schools try to enforce it. They put up signs, they actually go out there and confront the vendors. But because it is so pervasive, that attitude of, well, me no business, me I go sell. It's a wider situation along the streets in the cities, you know. It's just, as you say, it's a mentality that they need to.
Right, and it don't take legislation for change, because you're not going to see it immaculate. I bet you it not at immaculate, it not at champion, it not at the one, the AI, whatever it name, and it not at Hillel. How come it not there? Okay. So these we can't just say it on the book. No, it need reinforcement.
Has to be
just
enforced.
Like anything. Yes.
Yeah.
Just like if you know I broke the bank, you have to put police there 24 hours every day so that me not come broke the bank. The same thing, you have to put police and law enforcement there so that it doesn't happen. Exactly. Right? So that are some other things you have to get rid of. Your goods can sell elsewhere. You don't have to come at school gate, come pilfer from the kids. Go somewhere out in the world with your goods. So these are some of the things too. So we
definitely need to continue this conversation.
All right.
And I would invite you to do that. So we want to make a list of the negative things that we do as parents, as teachers, as citizens in general, that have a bad impact on the education. And then another list where we can have some practical things that we as parents, teachers, and citizens can do. All right, so thanks again, African. Thanks for your time and your input. And we'll talk again. More power.
All right, power.